So the next thing we're going to talk about is behavioral psychology. And what we mean by behavioral psychology is influence that buying decision. And once again, there'll be some interesting things that we'll talk about here. And once again, we want to be approaching this from an ethical point of view because we want to help the customer and give the customer the best opportunity to get the product they're looking for. And most of all, make sure they're buying our products because if that's what they're looking for, we need to be in there we need to be front of mind for them. We need to be the company that they think of when they want that particular product. So, in terms of behavioral psychology, this is something I'm a fan of and something I see more and more within digital marketing and people implementing it into digital marketing tactics even. Behavioral psychology. So, what that is understanding why people do what they do, that make the decisions they make, and how they can be influenced. So, let's take a look at this. So, the first thing to mention is customer behavior. According to Daniel Kahneman, the renowned psychologist, in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, we have two distinctive modes of thinking. You have system one and you have system two. So, what do we mean by system one and system two? So, system one is the part of the brain that makes the quick decisions. So, if I said to you, what's 2 plus 2? You'd just say 4 straight away. You've not really thought about it. You've just given that information straight away. This is what Daniel Kahneman refers to as system one thinking. However, there is also system two thinking, which is a bit more, rationalizes a bit more and thinks a little bit more. So if I said to you, what is 33 divided by 3 times by 5, then you might not get it straight away, but you'll start thinking. So as soon as you go into that thought process or that thinking mode, that is system two. But what system one generally does is make decisions based on what you've decided on in the past. So system one knows what system two is already going to say, so it says it. So it will never deviate from what you already know. But the point being is system one exists for the quick decisions, and system two is there for the more rational and thought out decisions. So when thinking about the customer, we want to put the customer at the center of everything we do. And what we mean by this is we should always be putting excuse me, I'll read it again. We should always be putting the customer at the heart of everything we do, always be thinking about them. And that's what makes us customer centric. So later on in research, in the research section, which is coming up in module 7, we'll give you more information on this. But we're going to look at surveys, feedbacks, and following the data. So if you put the customer at the center of everything you do, what you're looking at is you're always listening to the customer. I mean, this is something that I suppose without the risk of getting political, that's what governments try to do because they want to stay in power. I mean, whether it be for own reasons or own purposes, or whether it's for the wanting to do good or the greater good, whatever it is, they're always trying to listen to what the people are saying because they want to make decisions that are going to keep them in power and get them re-elected. So they're always listening. Empathize with the customer, understand the customer. They don't want your sympathy, but understand what they're going through. And if you can understand that, then if you're providing solutions, then you're giving them, it's useful to them. Respect the customer. The customer deserves your respect. So don't just think the customer is just a number or just some person that's going to give you money. That's not the way it works. Respect that customer because along with understanding them, you have to respect them. Continuous improvement. So when the customer's at the center of it, continuously improve things for them. How can we make things better for the customer? Because if you continuously make things better for them, then it's going to be unlikely that they're going to go away. You will notice it with some of the products or services that we use. In the initial stages, it was okay, but then they keep making improvements. Like I use an app for my utilities or gas company here in the UK, so I get gas and electric from the same company. But the app is really good. Before I could just look at my bill, which wasn't really exciting. Now I can input my meter reading. I can also, if I need some service doing at my house, I can book a service. So now with this one app, I don't even need to speak to them anymore. I mean, I didn't mind speaking to them, but it was always a long process, stay on the phone. Now, few clicks and my jobs are done. So this is what we mean by continuous improvement. Sometimes it's aided by technology, sometimes it's aided by research, and sometimes it's a combination of everything. Engage with the customer. Don't just take the money and forget about them. Keep them engaged. Understand. So even if they're not quite a customer, how do you engage with the customer? What about social media or the things we do on there? Show you're listening. Because everyone can say, yeah, sure. And we've all been in them conversations, whether it be with our boss and we're asking for a pay rise, or whether it be somebody else and they go, yeah, sure, yeah. And you know very well that they're not really going to take on board what you're saying, but show you're listening means that they feel valued. They'll think, yes, this person is bothered about me, and they'll be really happy with that. Educate. Sometimes you need to educate the customer. And I think an example of this is we had a client. Um, I think I've mentioned this. I may have mentioned this previously. We had a client, and we sent some instructions on how to put this item together. And then once they received the product, we still getting customer complaints and customer emails saying, "How do you put this item together?" So obviously, even though we'd done what we thought we'd done was right by including instructions, we also then we then created a quick video, sent it out to the customers, and included it as a QR code at all future deliveries or products that were sent out. But that's once again, that's us educating the customer, showing them how to use our products. And there's many companies that do very similar things. And finally, I've put on there, anticipate their customer needs. The most famous example of this, iPhone. Before that, as I've mentioned, we used to have phones attached to the walls in phone shops, linked by fishing wire on the wall, and you never got a chance to sit down unless you were deciding to buy a phone. But Steve Jobs suddenly came up with this new idea of an iPhone. I'm sure there was other people involved as well, but it was basically a three-in-one phone. It had what people wanted, but no one really said, "This is what I want." They anticipated the customer need based on research, based on information. I mean, if you think back to 20 years ago or so, even probably around 2000, if someone said to you that Nokias were no longer going to be about, they would really think that there was something wrong with you. Nokia was so popular. I mean, it was so good and everyone loved it. And then the Samsungs came in, but Nokia was still powerful. But then once this smart revolution came, I was going to say smartphone revolution, but it wasn't. It was really the iPhone revolution. Once iPhone turned up, and I mean, I don't even know if Nokia exists anymore. So it shows to you always be trying to look at anticipating what your customers' needs are. Even if they've not requested it, maybe through research, maybe through data analysis, maybe through just speaking to your customer, find out what's important to them. Changing behavior. The best way to change behavior is to change the environment. So we see this all around us, and most of the time it's obvious, but sometimes it's a bit more subtle. So you can see here two examples of entering your card details. So this is the company I use for shopping, and in the past, they've given me the option of entering my card details, which I did. And I was like, I always made sure that my wallet was near me, or I could get my card was next to me, or something like that. And I just used a scan card feature. But then they brought out Apple Pay, and it just made life so much easier. I just tapped on Apple Pay. Apple Pay it already has your name and address and all the details stored, and it just made it just made everything so much easier. But once again, they've changed my behavior because they made me do something that I wasn't planning to do. But once again, anticipating the customer needs, they've realized that Apple Pay is a thing now. And as you can see, Google Pays as well, according to that. So they've given people the option of how they would like to pay. And that just makes life easier. So they wanted to make the checkout process, they wanted people to convert more. So they changed the behavior. They gave us the option of paying by Apple Pay, and you can guarantee that conversions went up as well. Choice architecture. So give customers the choice, but make the decision easy. So here you can see there is one, two, three, four, five options. Five options, but which one do you think they want us to select? Without making it, there's nothing too scientific, nothing too clever, but based on what they've shown you in front of you, which one do they want you to select? Yeah, it's obviously this one in the middle here. More it says most popular. It's got this blue border around it, and you can see this is the option that they want us to select. So this is what we call choice architecture. So it's making the decision easy for us. I mean, if I wasn't sure, sometimes you look at things and you think, oh God, I want to join this company. I want to use a service, but which one do I need? Usually it's we've said, oh, that's most popular. Yeah, that'll do because everyone must be using it. You do it sometimes when you go to shops. Sometimes you're not sure, and you'll say to the assistant, say, which one's the most people pick, or what's your most popular one? Because you're trying to look for some sort of social authority, which we'll speak about later. You want someone just to guide you in the right direction, and that's the option. So when we talk about choice architecture, we're talking about this. Then moving on to pricing psychology. So obviously, when you're talking to a customer, pricing psychology is very important because obviously you need to communicate two things. You need to communicate the price of the item, but at the same time, you need to give a customer not quite the incentive, but a reason to buy. So, for example, we obviously across the world probably we use things like offers. So I know in the UK from geeky marketing research I've done, the word offers actually plays well as well. So rather than saying special price or whatever it might be, the word offers works really well here in the UK. So what we want to do is we want to provide the customers with offers. So basically give them a reason or an incentive to buy. Bundling products. We see this all the time with meal deals. Whether you go in to buy whatever you want to buy, but they usually add a chips and a drink with it or something like that. So this is bundling items together. Once again, making that decision easier for you. Loss leader pricing, a really good example or a current example, relatively current anyway, was the loss leader pricing in the UK supermarkets in the Christmas period, 2023. Um, one or two of the supermarkets in the week of Christmas. I think Christmas was on the weekend, if I remember correctly, and obviously the 25th of December. So before that, I think on the Tuesday of that week, a couple of the supermarkets did any veg for 15p. So 15p is something like 20, 25 cents. So you'd get a bag of vegetable for 15 pence. And everybody was like, whoa, 15p. So whether it be carrots, potatoes, um, um, parsnips. There was a number of, I think there was about five vegetables, 15p each for a bag. So this is what we call a loss leader. The supermarkets were probably losing money on it. Well, if not losing, they weren't making any money on it. So they were so once again, from getting it from the farmers to delivering it to the store, for the person to put it out on the shop floor, for the person to scan it at the checkout, the heating, the lighting, everything that goes along in a store. They definitely would have been making money on it, but this is what we call a loss leader. The idea of a loss leader is that you go in to buy the loss leader, but while you're in the store, you'll make other purchases as well, which then increases what we call your order value or average order value. So rather than, I mean, there will be the odd person that will just say, actually, because I was really smart with this, I just went in, bought 5 packs of veg, cost me 75p, and done, I left. But what the supermarkets wanted to do was that they wanted to bring you in to do your weekly shop, and they know at Christmas time it's going to be a very expensive shop because even if you don't celebrate Christmas, it's a great time of the year in the UK because there are bank holidays, people are off work, and it's a good time for friends and family to get together anyway. So they know people are going to do a large amount of shopping, so they incentivize customers by putting veg at 15p. It started off with two supermarkets, and then I think by the Saturday of that particular week, it was, I think, all four or five or six, even the upper market supermarkets in the UK. So, like the likes of your Waitrose, which is owned by the John Lewis Partnership. I think anyway, yeah. Well, Waitrose, it's more the upper end. Even they were doing 15p veg because they realized it was a real winner with the customers, and the customers were talking about it. It was on social media. I mean, I think even I created a social media video about pricing strategy, and I think that got 250,000 views just on pricing strategy. But it was focused on the loss leader pricing policy. But that's what loss leader pricing is. We also have what we call the decoy method. The decoy method is something that you would have probably all experienced at some point or another, a bit like when you go into the cinemas. So usually, we know cinema. So when you go into the cinema and you want to buy something from the cinema, yes, I know it's very expensive everywhere, I think. So you've gone into the cinema, you want to buy a popcorn and a drink. So you'll see the popcorn and a drink, and they'll say small, um, $8.95 or £7. Let's go with the dollars anyway. So the small is $8.95, but the large is $10.95, and it's like 3 times bigger as the small one. And you'd be like, wow, this is just crazy. Why would you buy a small one? It's only $8.95. If I'd buy the big one, there's 3 times as much, it's only $2 more. And that's what we call decoy pricing. The small was never really the what option they wanted you to pick. They wanted you to pick the large option. However, had they just done the large option and said popcorn and drink for $10.95, would have been like, yeah, I'm not sure. But when you see the price of the small one, you're like, wow, if I buy the big one, it's practically making me money. And so you'll just end up buying it. And then later on, you'll think, my God, $10.95 for a drink and popcorn. So this is what we call decoy pricing. Coming to number 9, the what we call charm pricing. So obviously, charm pricing is basically making things look cheaper than they actually are. So if something was £3.99, it just sounds a lot nicer than £4 because people generally read numbers from left to right. Or I suppose they do in in the UK at least. So if you see something priced at £3.99, your brain is automatically thinking three. So you're thinking £3, when in actual fact it's only 1 pence away from £4. But because we read from the left to the right, that's why they call it charm pricing, because it just feels a bit cheaper. And anchoring a price to give it a level. There's a few examples I could use, but anchor pricing is basically when you go to the coffee shop and you buy a coffee, whether it be a latte, cappuccino, whatever. But let's just say it costs £4. Yeah, it's quite expensive these days, isn't it? But let's just say it costs £4 or $5 or whatever it is. But they've put in your mind that a coffee now costs £4, so you've taken that in. What interesting companies like Nespresso do is something very clever. When you buy Nespresso, how do you buy it? It comes in a pod, doesn't it? You put the pod into the machine and it gives you the product. So I don't know how much each pod costs. So maybe if they do a pack of 10 pods for about £3. So you're thinking, wow, that's really good. That's like 30 pence just for one coffee, and you're thinking, my God, it's like £4 when I go to the thing from the shop. I love it. I'm gonna buy this. It's only 30p a coffee. But that's because they've anchored the price in. Had they put the same product in a jar, so we've all seen jars of coffee, and you just put a spoon in. Can you imagine the jar? The jar for a jar of coffee, it probably cost about 50, £60. But obviously, for a jar of coffee, 50, £60, it sounds crazy. I mean, who's going to pay 50, £60 for a jar of coffee? But because they put it into the pod, they've anchored our pricing. They've said to us that you'll think of a £4 coffee and then look at this for 30p. Where in actual fact, if you put it into a jar, it's like 40, £50 for a jar. So you can see this is what we mean by anchor pricing.